Hello, hello, and welcome to the Parenting from the Heart podcast. I'm here, as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube. Hello, I'm Laura Linklater. I am a cycle breaker parenting mentor. So I support parents who didn't have the most attentive upbringing, who had perhaps, we're talking a lot about adverse childhood experiences this week in the Facebook group, Cycle Breaker Parents Unite. So people who've had adverse childhood experiences, who have trauma in there, and they want to break the cycle so their children have a different way. And also with me is Beckie. Hi, Beckie.
Hey, Laura. How you doing?
And Beckie Shuttleworth. Beckie, tell us what you do. I mean, you've actually already been on one podcast, aren't you? So this is the second in our...
I have.
I think it's going to turn into a series,
Yeah.
let's be honest, isn't it, Beckie?
Yes, it is. So I am a children's wellbeing mentor, and I also teach yoga and meditation for children and adults and families. And my big kind of mission is to inspire children to shine more brightly and to live into the most truthful and joyful expression of themselves. And I do that through a combination of mindful movement, meditation, and mindset activities.
Beckie's incredible. I'm also going to put the spoiler out there because right now, at time of recording today, so this is Wednesday, isn't it? Not been very good with my dates and times today. Sorry, I'm late. So it's the 14th of July. So Beckie and I, because I support parents with their cycle breaking, with their mindset, with their healing and their skills. And Beckie is so awesome at supporting children. So Beckie and I are in the process of creating a membership for healing after the pandemic. Although, of course, we never know when the after is going to be. So we're not waiting until after. We're doing it now. So it's healing for families. This is coming. It will be coming in the new year, so about January time. And we are very, very excited. So you actually heard it here first. Yes. It's a special for the podcast people.
So excited about this.
I know. Oh, it's going to be awesome, isn't it? So we're talking today about anxiety. Because for eagle-eyed listeners, I put out a podcast earlier on in this week, a special midweek one with another woman called Lou Portis, who supports women who work for themselves. And actually it's applicable for anybody who was trying to work and balance summer holiday. Because if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and I just squeaked the Northern Hemisphere, we're just above the equator here in Vietnam. So if you are in the Northern Hemisphere, you're about to hit the summer holidays. And a lot of parents have been reporting, specifically in my group and in Lou's group, I'm worried, I'm stressed out, I'm anxious. How am I going to manage? So if you want to check out how to have a serene summer, then you go through the podcast files and you can access that. But that was a lot of how-tos, like how to manage your day, how to communicate with your children, when to work. And of course, the spoiler alert is that you choose, but it's about how you communicate with your family and have boundaries. Today, Beckie and I are talking about, we wanted to address anxiety, didn't we, Beckie? Because everyone's feeling it.
Yeah, in children, in parents, in family units as a whole. I think there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of
globally,
flying about.
Not just the Northern Hemisphere. Of course, it's only in the Northern Hemisphere on the summer holiday, but other people are on their winter break. But we are all feeling the anxiety, because I'm looking down at my notes here. Because what is anxiety? It's when you feel worried. It's when you feel unease. It's when you're stressed out about something that's happening now or the future. So anxiety is a very future-faced issue. And it's where we are, worried about outcomes. And sometimes people can calculate. I often do this, where I'm trying to calculate all the different outs of what might happen if I did this. How about if I tried this? How about if I did this? And actually, it stops us from living in the now. And it stops children, children who are, we'll talk about this a little bit more, I think, in a few minutes. Children who haven't had their transition days for their new year, who are going into early years, or who are going into secondary school, or even just the next year up in their school, they are going to be feeling anxious at home. And we parents and carers and young people supporters, we're living in a global pandemic. Of course we're anxious. Going to the shops makes you feel anxious. Going to a football match makes you feel anxious. It does right now, doesn't it? all of these things, like modern life induces anxiety. And it can, of course, some of that is normal, isn't it, Beckie? Like, of
Yeah,
course.
and just what you were
Worry
saying
about
about
things.
kind of thinking of all the different possible outcomes. And, you know, right now, that's an even more challenging task than usual because we just don't know, you know.
Yeah,
So although that's the kind of that approach can make us more anxious in any time, right now we're in a situation where things are changing so fast and we can't predict
and we don't
what will
have
happen
power.
next. So, you know, exactly, our power is our agency over our lives is diminished at the moment. And
Yeah,
so thinking about all the possible outcomes, all the possible things, the ways in which you might be able to deal with things, even if we're thinking about how can I manage these things, what can I do, that ability is sometimes taken away from us at the last moment. You
yeah,
know,
and then you
people
just
who've
go
booked
round in
holidays and they're
circles.
away and they have to come back, or, you know, all these things that are happening that are kind of out of our control at the moment are anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I mean, I know parents who were saying, you know, who'd send me a message. I mean, like friends of mine who were like, well, I just got into my day and my kid's bubble has burst. I've got to go pick him up straight away. But, you know, what if I was doing deliveries today and I can reschedule it? But it means that you can't get into anything because you never know. And yeah, that is stressful. And I do want to talk a little bit towards where, you know, we've just said like anxiety is a thing. It's really, it's like one of the buzzwords of the pandemic, isn't it? We are all feeling it in different ways, and some more than others. So when does it become maladaptive, as in something that holds you back? You know, we were just saying when you struggle to relax and to be in your life as it is, because you know you're off on these ruminations of, oh, but what if, or what if, oh, and I should have said that, and I should have done that, and it's when people do sometimes have like specific disorders, so that the medical disorders, the phobia or a social anxiety, or if they have had PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, or I've actually heard that called post-traumatic stress response, which I much prefer, because
Yeah,
actually isn't that a sensible
yes,
response
I
to a
prefer
traumatic
that
event?
too.
I've stopped using PTSD because it's not a disorder, it's perfectly sensible, and actually what we need to do is go and
The reasonable
heal.
response.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to go and heal the trauma, because somebody who's experienced trauma isn't going to react in a way if they hadn't that they would if they hadn't ever experienced that trauma. So it's a response, and yes, it's an unhelpful response because it's upsetting, but then we can heal it and then it reduces. Yeah, the D, I think it needs to go and I'm hoping it does.
Yeah,
Maybe.
if it can be identified, if that response can be identified and the support can be given to heal, then there's no need to describe it as a disorder.
Yeah, and to label it, and the stigma and the shame that comes with it, that actually doesn't need to be there because it is what it is, and you can take steps to heal. Yeah, and people having panic disorders, which is similar, and that can be a biological thing. So you could have a genetic predisposition towards anxiety. So this is not just COVID things, but isn't it so much worse if you do have a genetic predisposition, or if you have a history of trauma? Like I said, this week I'm talking all about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. This trauma, it changes the way that your body and your brain is wired in your childhood. So you will experience trauma, you will experience anxiety more deeply when you are an adult, when you're a young person, and when you're an adult, because I work with the adults. And of course, Beckie, you've seen it with your children and young people that you work with.
Yeah.
And of course, it can be things like an imbalance of brain chemicals, so the serotonin or noradrenaline, or the medical model. Yes, it absolutely can be that, which is why we do encourage people, if you're not finding any joy in anything, especially if you're a parent, and particularly if you have like very young children, I think like the postnatal depression is a really serious, often overlooked, because of the glorification of the overworked martyr of the mom, isn't it? And because of this, Beckie and I, we talk about this, like the moms who have to just keep going and going and going because this is what society, well, it applauds it, doesn't it? It applauds not
Well,
seeking
the
help.
model of the ideal woman being selfless as well, you know,
Yeah.
she's so selfless, as if it's like
Mm.
an attribute that we should be proud of. you know,
Always
oh,
put
she
yourself
doesn't think about
last.
herself, she does everything for her kids,
Yes.
you
Isn't
know,
she
and
wonderful?
that's not helpful. You know, that's not a helpful model, that's not a helpful expectation in society, because, you know, at the end of the day, if you're not putting yourself first, then you're not going to be able to be there for the people that depend on you the most.
Yeah,
And
these are the
so,
environmental triggers,
you
aren't
know,
they?
yeah,
If you're tired, you are going to snap more. If you're hungry or malnourished, whether that's because you're not feeding yourself or not drinking water, or whether it's because you're putting not healthy food into your body, you are not going to be able to play and support your children's physical and emotional needs as well. So yeah,
or if you're not
please
getting a
look after
break,
yourselves.
you
Yeah,
know,
and you have to
if
have
you're
the
not
break.
getting a break, if you're not maybe, you know, we're sometimes conditioned to not accept support that's offered to us. You know, if
Yeah,
someone offers to
or
help
it's a
you and
sign of
take the piss off your
weakness
hands for half
to
an
ask for
hour,
help.
take it. Say yes, please.
Yeah,
You know,
I still
it's not
remember when my third was born, like literally a week after he was born, one of my friends pops over and like to bring, bless her, she bought like a takeaway pizza, like an oven pizza, and she had a kid then, she was pregnant, and she come around, and her eldest had played with my bigger two, and she did my dishwasher. She emptied, it was clean, she emptied the dishwasher, put everything away, and I cried. And then, you know, fast forward 4 years, I did the same for her, and she had her third, and she was like, oh, I get it. Oh, I get it now. I just didn't realize that actually life is tough. COVID life is tough. Pandemic life is tough. And anxiety is right. Now, interestingly, I went on the NHS website, which, because I know there's an international audience, is the National Health Service. They have like all these information pages because, you know, Google is only as helpful as your source is reliable, isn't it? So I went on the NHS website. I always counsel people, especially with things like trauma and childhood trauma and parenting, like always check your sources, because one person might be extremely authoritative about how you need to relive that trauma, and actually that can lead to people re-traumatizing themselves. So, you know, it's and trying to go it on your own without support.
we've had a lot of this. Yeah, we've had a lot of this recently, especially with the pandemic, and people who have done their so-called research by watching a few YouTube videos and suddenly become extremely authoritative on certain subjects. And, you know, we've got to really, really be careful
Yeah,
of the information that we're taking in, because there's
always
a
check
lot
the
of stuff out there
credentials.
that just isn't helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and also
please
like,
do check where your information is coming from.
yeah, like parenting is, you know, one person will say put them on the naughty step and don't hold them, like don't come to, you know, if they've hit somebody and then they want to hug, don't you know, you're endorsing that behavior if you hug them. And some people do that, but they are not telling you what happens when your child comes to you for a hug and you say no. That's, you know, and of course if you're in a place where you need a break, you need to take the break, but I'm talking about that consistent not responding to a child's emotional needs. Like, that is not good for your relationship, and it is not good for them. It's and sometimes when you're, especially when you're at the coalface and you've had 2 hours sleep for the last 3 weeks, and I truly never believed that was true. I thought it was an exaggeration, and then I lived it. And you are very vulnerable, and you listen to all kinds of people who say, like, you need to do this, you need to do this, this is how you get rid of your anxiety, you know, you do this and that and the other. And then when it doesn't work for you, you feel like you've failed. And so actually going to an authority and somebody who you can check out their credentials and who isn't going to be really, what's the word, defensive when you say, okay, so, you know, what's your experience? Like, I know, Becky, I'm hoping that you'll share your experience, because I'm going to ask you about what you do to support people with anxiety in a minute. That yeah, one really interesting thing on the NHS, so an authoritative source, how to deal with anxiety, was the top thing. I find this concerning. The top option was medication. And it just, well, it made me suck in that breath of, really, do we need to go straight there? Like, it's a bit like that post-traumatic stress disorder. Well,
They could just change
not a
one
disorder.
letter and just make that meditation rather than medication, and we'd be in a
Yeah,
much better
yes,
place.
exactly. Like, why would you jump? Yes, because I don't want people to think like, oh, we're anti-medication, because we're not. And if somebody has a serotonin imbalance,
No,
yes,
not
you
at
will
all.
need medication, because no amount of meditating is going to change a biological imbalance. However, to jump straight to drugs for me is dangerous. And it just doesn't speak to nurturing the soul of our nation
produces a
and our planet.
society.
Yeah,
It produces the society that we have, where a lot of people rely on medication that's probably unnecessary for a lot of
outside
people.
sources
You know,
for
and
that.
we're treating symptoms rather than treating the cause.
Oh, Becky, yes. So yeah, and I was saying, like, how about things like, and it was mentioned after this, like psychological trauma healing therapy, to get to the roots of what it is, coaching, like things that I do, like mentoring, supporting you through healing and steps, cutting down on things like smoking or alcohol, because alcohol does affect your mood. So in the immediate time, you might think, oh yeah, alcohol's great, you know, it loosens me up. But actually you pay for it in poor sleep or, you know, doing things that you wish you hadn't done, or saying things that you wish you haven't done, and actually cutting the alcohol down and putting more good food and good drinks in you, like water, is much more beneficial if you want to get to the root of the anxiety, not address the symptom.
And I suppose with the medication thing, you know, I know some doctors recommend taking medication to kind of take the edge off what you're going through while you heal the other areas. But I think what we're talking about here is the issue of people getting stuck on medication with no follow-up.
Yeah,
You
and
know, and with
we are
no
not talking
other
about
input.
like treating extreme cases of anxiety. So I think that's also really, really clear. So we are not saying, like, in this podcast, we're not giving advice for extreme anxiety. We are talking about how life is really, really stressful and it's making people anxious. So maybe that's like the lowercase a, isn't it? So yeah, finally at the end of this list, they said meditation, well-being apps, yoga, got a special mention, and healing. Like, healing is the big the entire model, the umbrella of healing. So I talk about healing, going into trauma, and actually like healing the trauma and learning practical parenting skills as the way that parents can break the cycle. Now, Becky, a lot of people also at the same time with me, they choose to do specific, like they have a therapist and me because the therapist doesn't help with, okay, so what do I do tomorrow? You know, they help with the deep healing, and I have elements of that, but that's not what I do because I'm a coach and I wouldn't pretend to be a therapist. So people sometimes have their own therapy that speaks to them. So for some, that's somatic therapy. For others, it's like dialectical, like cognitive behavioral therapy. And so what you do, this is why we're launching our membership, because we work so well together, is you support people. In fact, do you want to just share what you're doing, because you're doing something for the summer holiday, which is why we put a rush on this podcast.
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
that we could get it out, because Beckie
so I support
something now.
Yeah, so I support children. That's okay. So I support children, especially children who are feeling a little anxious, feeling a little worried, maybe having trouble fully engaging with their learning opportunities, maybe having some difficulties with their peer relationships or family relationships. Any child who is feeling or the parent is noticing that they are not engaging fully in the way that they used to. And so over the summer holidays, I'm working with another incredible expert educator, Claire Ford, and we are launching a program on the 2nd of August called The Magic of Meditation, Movement and Mindset. And this is a 2-week program of just 1 hour a day at 10 a.m. UK time, from Monday to Saturday for 2 weeks from the 2nd of August. And this program is specifically to support children in creating their own recorded meditations, their own experiences of moving to different pieces
so it's
of
tailored
movement
to
in different
them.
ways. And so they create their own recorded meditations, they create their own recorded pieces of movement, moving according to different elements, earth, water and fire. And we also create as a group a unique set of affirmation cards that every child in the group is going to keep. And so it's just a really, really beautiful course. And I'm just so excited to deliver it. And we do still have a few spaces available. So I think the information about that will be in the show notes.
Yeah, all the links. Yeah, I should say that.
Yeah,
all the links to the groups,
all
and
of the links
to everything is always
doing.
in the show notes. So Becky, you just said about
so
parents
that's
noticing that.
Summer.
Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone listening, and Becky, that there is about a half-second delay, isn't there, between me and you, like the relay through Zoom, because it is 6,000 miles, isn't it? So it's still doing its job. So what are the kind of things that parents notice that make them think? You said like parents would come to you because they've noticed that their child is behaving in an anxious way, or their behavior has changed. It might not always be a really obvious. That's the thing is that I'm getting at. Like, it's not always really obvious. Like, they don't hold like a sign up and go, "Mummy, I'm feeling anxious," because they don't always know how to say it. So what do parents tell you? What should we look out for?
So I think
as a parent myself.
Really. So I mean, I've been working with kids for, I think it's over 23 years now, in a load of different settings, in schools, in nurseries, in preschools, in early years centres, in creches and after school care, and all sorts of different settings over the years. And I've spent a lot of time with a lot of children. And so one thing that I would say is that and we also talk about this in safeguarding as well, is that every child will show their feelings in a different way. And children don't say, as you said, "I'm feeling really anxious." And I saw something recently online which I thought was beautiful, and I think maybe you saw it too, or maybe you even posted it, saying a child won't say to you, "I've had a really bad day at school," especially a very young child. They'll say, "Will you come and play with me?"
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to note about how.
Yes, I teach parents a lot about what is the child not saying, or what is underneath what they're saying.
Yeah.
And like they might climb on your lap. Well, you talked about regressing, like becoming babyish, which is a thing that really winds parents up. And I know that sounds awful, but when you're stressed and when you're tired and you're anxious yourself, particularly cycle breaker parents who, when they were young, this is why the healing has to come with the skills, who when they were young, they had needs and their parents were like, "Oh, go away," or they were high, or they weren't, they were emotionally shut down because our parents had their own stuff, didn't they? That it's not any fault of the child
or whatever it is.
Yeah, but then when that child goes into an adult who has their own children, and then their children go through a global pandemic and become babyish, or like, "I can't do it," and they use that voice, and you're tired and you're stressed and you're not sure about when how to get food and things, it pushes the button. It is triggering. And I think sometimes reading underneath what is the child's behavior saying, just knowing to look out for that actually helps the parents with their triggers. So could you talk a bit more about that?
So yes. So I would say that children, like you said, they might regress a little. They might want you to do their shoes up for them when you know that they can do them themselves. They might not be, that child that child who you're going crazy trying to get them dressed for school in the morning and they're just not getting dressed, and like those little things that can be nothing, can just be a time wasting thing, at the same time. Really, really worth looking out for. What is this child saying by not wanting to get dressed for school in the morning? But they also, so we tend to notice in safeguarding as well that children might either regress a little or become a little more withdrawn, or they go the other way and they start to act out, and there starts to be more maybe physical violent interactions with siblings, those sorts of things where their anxiety or their worries or their stress is just exploding out of them because they're not able to.
One of my children does this thing where he'll go, I mean, I know people on the podcast can't hear that. So basically, like he bunches himself together and then he grinds his jaw and he sort of like wobbles from side to side, and it's just his way of saying like, "I'm so full of angry," and it's like the precursor to an explosion. And of course I can see this in other children when I was a teacher. But then I had to trial and error. Like he had to explode a few times for me to go, that thing that move that he does, that is the I need support, mum. Help me with these feelings because they're winning, and then then you use your skills to support them with it. So Becky, because I know we've only got a few minutes.
What I would also say is, oh, sorry.
Oh no, what I was going to say, right, say that, but then also could you mention, because we were talking about the child anxiety and adult anxiety, and you have something that's starting next week, I think, for mums, for adults. Could you share that? Because actually, I think that we want to support our children, but we also, like, as the mom, and I'm in lockdown right now, or here in Vietnam, I'm like, it's not that fun. I mean, it's lockdown, isn't it? We can't go out. Like, I might well join you on it if I'm honest. I really might do.
Please do. I'd love to have you.
Like, how can we support ourselves? Like, we being all the parents in the world.
Yeah.
We all join you.
Starting on the 5th of August, for
that'll be in the show notes,
the 3 Thursdays. So the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th of August, 7:30 p.m. UK time. I am running a brand new program called Cultivating Inner Peace, and it was basically born from my yoga and meditation class that I teach online, and I was talking to quite a few students about the kinds of benefits they were getting from the things that we were doing. And they were talking about having better sleep, reduced anxiety, less tension, feeling less worried. All of these. That I was finding that people were getting these benefits from my classes anyway. So I thought, okay, let me just go a bit deeper with this, and let me put something together that specifically targets these areas, that specifically supports people who are feeling anxious, worried,
and
tired,
in the middle of the summer holiday, where it's all coming to a head as well.
Yeah, and to give people a toolbox of resources of what they can do to support themselves. So first of all, come along, have an hour and a half of time where it's going to be a workshop environment. It's not going to be a class that I lead you through and you're completely silent. It's going to be more of an interactive workshop environment. We're going to do lots and lots of different activities, breath work, meditation, restorative yoga postures. So very relaxing, very calming. We're going to do some self-massage. We've got all sorts of, we're going to do a bit of tapping, a bit of EFT. So really, really calming, relaxing activities that you can do, in a moment. So things that you can do that take 30 seconds, things that you can do that take 10 to 15
that's
minutes.
really interesting. Like that moment where the kid has pushed your buttons and you have to go, Mummy's feeling quite frustrated right now, so Mummy's going to take a moment, and then you go and hide in the kitchen, do a bit of tapping, just release the stress. Because actually, so that's what we need sometimes, isn't it? Well,
and so these are the things I've been talking about. Is how can you build these things into your day? Well, when you get up for your morning wee and you do a few deep breaths on the toilet, those sorts of things. Literally, like, how can you build those things into your day?
A lot of people say, I don't have time. And actually, if you have the right things, the right skills, it doesn't have to be like an epic 45-minute meditation that you can't do when you have 3 kids jumping on you. And maybe you can find times for that, and that is amazing. Maybe you have a babysitter, or you wait till the kids are gone to bed. But also, hand in hand with that comes the, like, I'm going to explode in a minute. I need those things, and like having a toolbox that you can rely on from somebody who knows what they're doing.
Aspect of this course
and
as well
safe.
is a video that's available throughout each week. So the classes will be recorded. There'll be a 10 to 15 minute guided video for each week as well. You can do as much or as little as you can in between each class. Those will be available for you to access throughout the class and beyond. And so, really, really excited about launching this. I've already had 2 people book spaces, and so spaces are limited. So please do jump onto my website if you're interested in booking this. The course is £47 only for the whole thing until the 25th of July, and after that the price is going to go up. So so please do book quickly. And what else? Oh, and also in September I'm going to be launching Shine Brightly for Children, which is going to be aimed specifically at those children going into year 7. So those children who have left primary school and are going into secondary school. I am here to support those children throughout the first term of their transition.
Becky,
And
can we
so
do
I will
another
probably talk
podcast
about
on
that
that?
again on another
Can we do a
podcast in a
whole
month or
podcast
so.
on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Because actually
Yeah.
that is, and many people know that I was a primary school teacher, and I was mostly in upper key stage 2, which is, I was at ages 7 to 11, but I also did work in a transition unit from primary to secondary. So I worked in year 7 as well. I mean, I've taught all years up to, I've taught from age 6 to 18, which is a bit ridiculous, but it's all fun. And transition into secondary school is a big thing that I wasn't, even as a teacher, even as a year 6 teacher, when I saw it from the other side in year 7, I realized we need to do more. And that is not, I mean, that was like, what, 6 years ago, not during a pandemic where you didn't get to see your new teachers, you didn't get to do the walk around in your new school. And even if you did, everyone was wearing masks and you couldn't read their faces. And actually, I think, there we go, Becky. So I'm going to invite, here we are. I'm officially inviting you on again to talk about year 6 to year 7 transition, because there will be parents listening to this who had a rubbish experience at high school. And there will be parents who are worried right now about, even if they didn't have a rubbish experience at high school, but there will be parents listening to this podcast who are thinking, how do I support my child going into secondary school or going into early years, that kind of thing? What do I do to support them? And I think that we could.
So one thing I'd just mention as well is that in the show notes, there will also be a link to a PDF document that I've created called Supporting Children Who Are Feeling Anxious or Worried. And that link will be there in the show notes. It's just 8 top tips on how you can support your child.
Oh, you're so lovely. You are so lovely. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Becky. Please, if you're listening to this and it has helped, please share it with other people, because anxiety is a big deal right now, and it does, I mean, obviously life is a bit it's making us all anxious, and that's okay. And the more people who hear about, messages like, you can do these things and it will be okay, and you need to support yourself and look after yourself, well, the more the better, isn't it? So thank you so much, Becky. And thank you, listeners.
For having me.
Bye-bye. See you soon.